I will be pretty much straightforward, Alan. I prepared some solid questions, and it won't take your time very much. So, very first of all, I understand that you met with Aung San Suu Kyi after she got released very first time from house arrest after 1995, and the Voice of Hope was published in 1996, very first time. So at that time, why did you decide to meet and talk with Aung San Suu Kyi?
Um, you may or may not know, but I was blessed to be a Buddhist monk in your country. I went there in 1977. I eventually met the late Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw when he was alive, obviously. And I ordained as a monk in 79 and stayed for several years. I was told to leave now and again by the dictator Ne Win. And I
Any
met
particular
during,
reason? Sorry, any particular reason? You are
no, back in
instead of
those
the
days,
deportation.
we were
Was it
told
instead
you
of the
had,
deportation?
yeah, 24 hours to leave, no explanation.
I see. Okay. Yeah.
But during that time, to answer your question, I think it may have been in 1982 when the former general of the armed forces, U Tin Oo, was released from 6 years of solitary confinement. After spending a night at home, he came to the monastery, the Mahasi Tatanayekta. He ordained as a bhikkhu. We became very close friends.
I see. Yeah.
He explained to me the psychology of dictatorship in Myanmar. I didn't know about it.
No.
The level of control and terror and persecution. Jump time to 1988, 8888. The whole world recognized Burma's in convulsion, a revolution based on the students overthrowing dictatorial government. I went into the country underground shortly thereafter. I also went out to Menoplau and met with the NCGUB. This resulted in the book Burma, the Next Killing Fields, blessed with a foreword by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, which was published in 1990. At that time, I learned in 88, 89, and 90 of Daw Suu obviously being under house arrest. My teacher, after Mahasi Sayadaw died, was the late Venerable Sayadaw U Pandita. He was one of the only people allowed to see her during house arrest. So I got a firsthand account of this remarkable human being. Then I began to understand that she's obviously the daughter of the late General Aung San, the founder of Burma's military and army. And then we did a photographic book in 1994, Burma's Revolution of the Spirit. And then eventually, when Daw Suu was released in 95 of July, I was asked, could you get into the country and meet with her and allow her to tell her story to the world?
By whom?
By a publisher in Europe, Edition Stock out of Paris. And I consulted with Daw Suu's husband. He said, under no circumstance, try to get in there. It's extremely dangerous. Anyway, long story short, I went into the country. I met with U Tin Oo, who was recently released as well. And he said, I'll do my very best, Alan, to put you in touch with Daw Suu. I would go to her weekend talks in front of her house at 54 University Avenue. Amazing events to understand democracy and dynamic action. 6 weeks later, to answer your question, I got a phone call from Daw Suu's personal assistant saying, Daw Suu would like to meet you. I went to her house. I presented my vision. We talked about our mutual background with Mahasi Sayadaw, U Tin Oo, with Sayadaw U Pandita. I said, Alan, I would be honored to bring the story of our people's revolution to the world, so long as you include my two principal colleagues, U Tin Oo and Uncle U Chi Mong. And that's how it began. And we met every week, once or twice a week for 5 months. And she told me every conversation we should act as if it's our first and last, because obviously, under dictatorship in Burma, 1 hour, one doesn't know what will happen the next hour. And of course, here it is 30 years later, and look at the circumstances. So that's how it came to be.
So before you started having the conversation with Aung San Suu Kyi, were you already familiar with her sort of political literature, such as very famous writings, Fear from Freedom or something? Were you already familiar with those sort of writings?
Yes, I was quite close with her husband, Michael. I read Freedom from Fear, front to back to front to back several times. I thought it was brilliant. I knew so much in my own humble way about the politics and the Dhamma and the ethnic groups throughout Myanmar. I had traveled the country. I spoke the language to some extent. And yes, to answer your question, I was utterly taken in, not just by Daw Suu, but her inner consortium of women and men, not just the NLD. They all had a similar philosophical, open-minded, Dharma-oriented, trans-Buddhist. People misunderstand her. Yes, she's a Buddhist, but she's also a remarkable trans-Buddhist in that she's very inclusive. So I was very familiar with her. So we deeply dove into the philosophy, the views on nonviolence. One of the most compelling aspects of Daw Suu that I think is radically not understood worldwide is, as a nonviolent revolution, it wasn't just restraining from using weapons, it was understanding the power of the human voice as vehicle for political, social, cultural change. And
Could you bit more collaborate the term you use, trans-Buddhist? What does it mean by that exactly, Alan?
well, people often accuse her of being a Buddhist national and just being dismissive of other religions and ethnicities. She was rooted, if I may say this, and I scrutinized her thinking. I mean, the book was one thing, but we had so much more material than that. She was about freedom, freedom for human beings in the context of culture, society, to live and breathe. She was rooted, my friend, as much as I could see in my investigative journalism and as a Dharma ally, in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. In the preamble, we understand all beings are born equal in rights and dignity. Daw Suu was rooted in that more than being a Buddhist. She had Buddhist understanding, obviously. She was a very avid meditator, but her depth of commitment was to the universality of freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of communion and religion and economic benefits for all beings, regardless of your background and language. And so that's what I use by the word trans-Buddhist. And she was also very careful, if I may say, with trying to understand the mind of the other, especially the enemy or the adversary. She was very fond of a concept that Sayadaw U Pandita introduced her to called non-vilification, non-demonization. And so moving along from your question, part of her ethos, if you will, in nonviolent struggle for freedom and equality and justice was not to vilify the dictatorship and the ecosystem of oppression and tyranny as much as it was to understand how could we activate, you know the word, hiri and otapa, their conscious shame, their conscious regret, that place in all of us that recoils at saying and doing things that are detrimental to other beings. So when I use the word trans-Buddhist, I say that she was primarily rooted in the universality of human rights with a Dharma orientation that wasn't about teachings of the Buddha per se, but more of a practical expression of mindful intelligence, if you will, emotional intelligence. And I think she was radically misunderstood because she's really intelligent and very nuanced. And most men in the world, especially leaders, don't understand reconciliation as a political vehicle for peace. She's a believer in discussion, dialogue, even if we disagree. That's far better than clubbing each other with rocks and stones and drones and nukes.
Thank you, Alan. It's very deep, and I think I wish I could fully understand what you have told to me in that philosophical context. I will try, I promise you. And you already covered what I would like to ask you to put as a question, what the Buddhist doctrines is reflecting in her political philosophy or anything in his belief in political belief. So I think you have already covered that quite deeply. So I would like to hear your personal touch when you have met with her in person for the very first time. What would be your very first impression on her as a human
Elegant,
being? Yeah.
elegant, composed, reverentially respectful. One of the most troublesome things that I had with her, to be very direct, was that she's curious about people. So she would somewhat almost interrogate me and question me about who I am and my beliefs and my meditative background and what compelled me about. I said, Dasu, I'm here to bring your voice to the world, not mine. And so she's, I would call it like a intercommunion, sacred reciprocity. Uh, Always punctual, very funny, deeply satirical. And one of the things that I share with her is that she would often say, I have a short temper, especially with stupid men. You know, and that's the kind of wit that she had. And she obviously meant people like the late Ne Win and Kin Yunt and Tan Shui and Ming Online when he was a young boy, and men who oppress people. And so she was very nuanced and very subtle. She rarely ever expressed directly anger or judgment, punctual, respectful, caring. And the other thing that I noticed, because she gave me full access to her home, to her friends, to her special outings, and I met so many people around her. And why do they call her Masu, mother of the people? She generously will get down on her hands and knees and talk to the victim of someone who's been tortured, who's lost their home. She holds their hands. She gives them money, provides food for them. And so she's really what, she coined the term metta in action, karuna in action, love in action, compassion in action. And so I'm not bringing qualities to this conversation that, in my humble estimation, exceed who she is. And we're not even talking about what does it mean to survive the torture of solitary confinement where she is right now. She's very forgiving as well. So those are some of the qualities that I noticed, and very easy to laugh and generous and caring and very mindful. She moves her hands with poise. She's very poetic. She's a beautiful mind.
I have also heard some criticism, and especially she tends to influence on among the crowd, and sometimes she outbursted, and she is very outspoken, and uh, I'm wondering whether there are nobody with same frequency with her brain level. I don't know why. Are you agreeing? Do you agree if I say she is very influential person, and sometimes she has been called arrogance. Would you agree that sort of reference to her?
I will be very frank with you, which of course you want me to be, and I want that for myself, is she's extremely intelligent, very educated, as we know. I think one of the things, to answer this slightly indirectly, but to the core of the issue, I've never been a political prisoner. I've never been tortured like this. Your country is brutalized under a terror regime. I've written about it recently in a book called A Conversation with the Dictator, an a challenge to the authoritarian assault. It's a fictional dialogue with Ming Online. It's just coming out on June 19th, her birthday. And it deals with this very head on. Is she arrogant? In your country, with the preposterous, pathological, I don't want to vilify, but their behavior warrants an explanation. The demonization and the terror campaign of the dictator and the Tamada, the military. You've got to be tough to stand up to them. Call her arrogant, whatever you want to do, but can you imagine being in your people, the young Gen Z, the revolutionaries, the ethnic armed organizations dealing with a tyranny, a dictatorship supported by Xi Jinping of China, Putin of Russia, and people criticize her for being arrogant? You're dealing with the worst terror campaign in modern history, brutally killing children, women, day after day. And what is she supposed to do? Stay committed to nonviolent engagement. What do you want me to do? Plus, the other point I think it's very important for us to understand, yes, she is flawed. She would say this over and over again. I don't suffer stupid men easily. And I've seen her, no, that's a dumb question, but nothing more than that. Very egalitarian in communication with her colleagues. I know them all very well. They adored her, and she adored them. But the point I'm trying to make, and I'll conclude with this, is the study of trauma. 21,000 political prisoners, plus probably thousands more that we don't know about. Another couple of thousand that have been killed, executed, or disappeared. But 21,000 men and women, elders and children, monks and nuns, teachers, doctors, students, poets, filmmakers are suffering at this very moment in prisons in Myanmar, as she is. That is at a severe level of day-to-day torture. What that does to the human psyche, the human heart, I would say to you, and I would say to the world, let this woman, let these people that care about democracy and freedom have any psychological response they want, if it's arrogance, if it's anger. But what they're trying to do is bring peace and freedom and justice to the 54 million people of Myanmar. Is she arrogant in comparison to what she's dealing with? She's, quite frankly, it's quite saintly. Even in the Rohingya crisis from 2013 to whenever she was incarcerated, February of 2021, radically misunderstood. She had the former Secretary of General, Kofi Annan, go out there, spend a year with his colleagues studying the crisis. Look where it is today. No one even mentions ARSA and their 30 military outposts simultaneously attacked. Hamas did it once in Israel. Look what we've seen. No one even brings this up. People say she was silent. We've looked at everything she said from 2010 when she was released till she was arrested. She spoke up repeatedly. I met her numerous times. Alan, they say I'm silent. They don't like what I'm saying. I can't say it any more clearly. There are crimes on both sides. It's horrific. Let's bring peace there through economic support, religious tolerance. Secretary General Kofi Annan, the day he was to give his report, a Hamas-like terrorist attack to 30 military outposts. And she was vilified, crucified for that. Ming Online saw the opportunity. Where is she today? Where is your country? All but forgotten in a dark hole of Western arrogance, unthinkable Western hypocrisy. 1 million Muslims killed in Iraq on my country's money, my tax dollar. Okay, we can go on and on from Libya to Afghanistan. 17 years of terror there. Daw Suu has faults, but like a lot of great women throughout history, it's been a global witch burning. And I think that's the message that needs to go out to the world in your documentary. And read our new book, Conversation with a Dictator. It's 2 hours, a literary feature film that shares all these things to the world. We want to gift it to the world on our campaign on June 19th, useyourfreedom.org, to let the world in on the truth of your people. And the last thing I want to make, she's an easy target because she's attractive, intelligent, studied in the West, her father being one of the most famous people in the country. But she has that archetypal rare quality of being a divinely feminine inspired mother figure. I would say the biggest criticism that she told me, Alan, could I have done more? Could I do more? U Win Kane, her close advisor, I know very well, 83 years old in Obo Prison in Mandalay. Could we do more? We were sitting next to people in the parliament that tortured and killed our kids and family. We want reconciliation. Could we do more? So I think it needs to be completely revised, rethought in your country. And although I love the people of your country, all of them, the last quality that people don't understand about her that the trauma element, Coco Ni being assassinated at Rangoon Airport. I was there. I was in Rangoon at the time, not at the airport. She had numerous death threats. What is it like to live with someone angry at you, much less a death threat, with the Thamada, who's a terrorist organization? So arrogant that she's even talking and walking without being in a psychiatric ward is a miracle. And all of the people of your country, most of them, all the leaders, are former political prisoners, either now dead or disappeared or in prison. Where's your compassion, world? Where's your Dharma wisdom, world? Where's your emotional intelligence? This woman is radically resilient, and she's got a purpose that she's fighting for. So I don't go down the avenue of was she autocratic? Was she short-tempered? Yes, I would be the same way living under those conditions. I've been there under those conditions. It's horrible. Horrible. So that's my response. And I feel it's a pretty honest one. And I really pray that the world reevaluates their opinion of her, an opinion of your people, and the opinion of the NLD. Could they be more inclusive of the ethnic armed organizations? I mean, you've got 130 plus ethnic groups in your country. You've got a mini universe with 130 dialects, fractured by settler genocidal colonialism for 130 years. Welcome to British imperialism in your country. So when you look at the arrogance of the people, even Ming Online, it's rooted in the replication of what the UK did to your people. And people don't want to look at that. Then you have World War II and bombing Mandalay and Rangoon, hand-to-hand combat. Her father rose up in the ranks, brought independence. And look what your people have had to deal with based on white imperialist settler colonialism. And they're trying to unshackle themselves. Ming Online in the book, I understand, and I promise to end with this. One of the greatest gifts your country brings to the world is reconciliation and redemption. Daw Suu was advised by Seda U Pandita over and over again. Look at Tan Shui. Look at Ming Online and remember King Ashoka from ancient India. He was a murderous killer, sorrowless. He saw the murder on the war fields of what he had done and broke down, as you know, and had a complete change of conscience. And he became the great King Ashoka, who brought peace to India and sent the Dharma with his children all around Asia. And we have present day Dhamma based upon King Ashoka's radical transformation. Dasu believed at her core that Ming Online, Tan Shui, and the Thamada had that possibility in them. And this is what I mean by trans-Buddhist. We can't kill our way out of this, Alan. If people see that we killed our way out of it, someone's going to disagree with us in the future, and they'll kill us instead. We've got to go the long, hard road, which is reconciliation and dialogue. In the world, look at the world today, Ukraine, Russia, Israel, Gaza. You know, it's in Dasu and the people, they're behind bars, and we want them out so that they can bring this voice to your people and have a federal democracy, free of the horror of the Thamada. And may Ming Online go to China and retire with his family, or to Putin in Russia, and just leave the country to the people, my friend. And that's what this book is about. Trying to have a conversation with Ming Online. Do the right thing, sir.
Alan, I have got that Rohingya question, and you have already covered that, uh, uh, and I'm satisfied with that. And I was going to ask you, in 2012, she decided to enter the election and join the parliament, and essentially she became the uh, 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 parliamentarian, a real politician, rather than the idealist. So, do you think she can still hold her political and philosophical belief at the same time? Meanwhile, she is being a politician.
Yeah, it's a beautiful question. I went into your country. I was banned by, it must have been Tan Shui for 17 years after my book with Dosu. And then I was, Tain Sein unbanned me in 2012 or 11. I met with Dosu in San Francisco when she was awarded the Václav Havel Award for Creative Dissent. And we talked for the first time in 17 years, and she invited me to come back, please keep working for our people. And I went back. My point is, for the next 10 years, no, 8 years, I went in maybe 30, 40, 50 times.
Yeah.
I met with all of them. She arranged many interviews with her parliamentarians, friends, allies. We did that 4-volume set of books, Burma's Voices of Freedom, with my colleague, Fergus Harlow, with these long form interviews with all of the leading people. Her philosophical, spiritual intelligence and her political views and her manifestation as a politician, which she was very clear about that. I personally feel that it's her DNA, that she's radically upright. I've never seen a person more principled and more nuanced in her inner dialogue, her mindful, intelligent, skillful means dialogue. And I was up close to these people for nearly a decade after her release. I don't know how they did it day to day. The amount of pressure that was not being spoken about or publicized, the vilification, the threats, the murdering, the robberies, the threat of rape, killing of children. There was nothing that was spared. And I'd never in my life been so moved at their resilience and their quality of mindful steadfastness. And I have to say that my investigative journalistic experience being up close to them, and I was in Naypyidaw for quite a while, and also in Rangoon and around the country, the stamina, for example, I met with U Win Tin several times before he passed away, after his release after 19, 20 years of solitary. He gave away everything, as you know, and lived in a very small open air cubicle in Rangoon. And I bring his name up because he embodied a type of compassionate based fusion, if you will, of mindful, emotional, and Dharma intelligence that was so evocative and compelling to feel. And I say this, we did 5 long form interviews on film, not an iota of vengeance. So if you're asking about spiritual philosophical views in their politics, I never saw in Daw Suu, U Chi Mung, U Tin U, all the other NLD leaders. And Min Ko 9, I knew Min Ko 9 very well, and Coco G very well. It wasn't just the NLD, the Open Society 88, and I never felt vengeance from them. And I think the Myanmar people, and I say Myanmar more than Burmese, is that the people of your country underestimate, my humble opinion as a kind of a brash American, the emotional, spiritual, trans-Dharma intelligence of your people. I mean, right now they're struggling to survive. But within that, the quiet revolution of the way in which they thrive. I've been at the Halangthaya where there's nearly a couple of 100,000 people so impoverished, it's numbing to see and believe. And the people are radiant a lot of the time. And a composed quality of caring, people so poor giving you something. That's your country's political leadership. Has there been corruption? Not anything, not even 1% to the corruption of the deep state of my country or the Democratic Party of my country, even the Republican Party too. So I have, in my humble way, tried to not just bring Myanmar's politics, but whatever has taken place in your country, I would call it's the most radiant gem that I've ever seen in the world. And I've been around the globe a lot of times. There's nothing like what's gone on in your country. And again, people misconstrue the autocratic, arrogant projection onto Daw Suu. She was the first always to be radically inclusive. But a lot of the time, so many of the men and women near her were radically traumatized from torture, rape, killing of family, losing of all of their possessions, and decades of incarceration. Psychologically, none of us have ever studied that. The mass collective trauma of the revolutionaries in Burma, on top of decades and centuries of collective trauma. I don't want to vilify the British, but imposed by settler genocidal colonialism. And I've seen what the British have done. I've gone to the British Burmese Museum in London and seen what happened. They were torturous, starving of the people, beheadings, hangings, public floggings. People have a misconstrued understanding of George Orwell. He was a policeman under the British regime. And where was he placed a lot of the time? Out in the Insane province, near Insane prison, the largest prison institution in Asia built by the British to imprison the Burmese radical activist. And he was there studying in his own way colonial settlerism. No wonder he wrote a book later on, 1984. He was a participant in it. Your country has epicenter relationship to courageous revolutionary nonviolent action and Big Brother consciousness. And that's why it's so archetypally compelling. And that's why I did this book, and we've done these books, is to bring what a global learning it would be for President Trump, for Netanyahu, for Putin, for Xi Jinping. Wow, we can have a more prosperous world by putting down the weapon. And that's what your gift is at your country. And that's the gift of the democracy movement. Freedom without killing.
Alan, yes, I promise you I will try to cover all the accents you have told me, and you have explained to me quite extensively, and I wouldn't anticipate I can hear from you that sort of deep level and detailed explanation. I really appreciate for that, Alan. I that will be intended to the Burmese speakers, Burmese speaking audience, so it will be voice over. So before I conclude this conversation, my last question would be, what would be Aung San Suu Kyi's position in this current situations in Myanmar? So frankly, Alan, I won't beat the bush around. Uh, could she be happy to see uh, her followers and her people are now engaging in armed struggle? What would be her position?
And my heartfelt response, and I've thought about this quite a bit, and I brought this issue up in the recent book, Conversation with Ming Online, the dictator. Her father took up armed resistance at first as a young boy, a young man in their 20s, 30 of them, trained in Japan, came back and cut right to the chase. 3 or 4 years later, he's in London with Prime Minister Attlee and negotiating independence for his country through the conscious, mindful use of armed revolt. That's her heritage. She knows it well. She grew up in it. She's seen it, and she's seen as a recipient, and the people of your country, a recipient of those who use the weapon wrongly. I think it's important to the right use and the wrong use, and I know it's a relative issue. I would say in this case, there's been no option left. You tried the Spring Revolution and the civil disobedience movement. Unbelievable moral courage. What are you expecting us to do? Just to cower? And so I think she would say, right on, spot on. And the missing link in this is we need to be unified. Your country voted, as you know so well. 88% of the people voted for the Democratic leadership with State Councilor Daw Suu, President Win Myint, and so on. The February 21 military coup with Ming Online decapitated the elected Democratic leaders. The decapitation of democracy in Burma. In a slow motion genocide of any activist in the country that supported democracy. Okay. Now, Daw Suu, what would she say? You put the pressure on them, just as my father did in World War II, first against the Japanese and then aligned with the British to get rid of the fascist Japanese, and then gave back the British and said, we want our independence. And so I would say the missing part is a global unified call with the Burmese diaspora, all political leaders, all journalists at one point who didn't like what Daw Suu did. They should leave the past behind in a unified public media, art, expression, Bono, all of them, call for Daw Sue's release, President Win Myint's release, and all the elected Democratic leaders as the ethnic groups and the NUG continue to pressure the Thamada into a more and more narrow position. They've already lost Rakhine State. They're going to lose Naypyidaw, and soon, like all dictatorships, in my humble opinion, they all collapse. Ming Online, it's better to act sooner than to wait for the possibility of what could happen. I'm not looking at like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Like Ceausescu in Romania, Idi Amin, how many of the great dictators, Gaddafi, where do they end up? Ming Online. No one's giving up, and the only way forward is to understand what's best for the people. Stop your denial, awaken to conscience, and this is my last point, let us hear from the lawfully elected Democratic leaders, once they're free, what they think is the next step, along with the leaders of the ethnic groups. And I really have gone strong in this opinion. I think everyone should come to what's left of the parliament in Naypyidaw and have what I think is a great label, the Ashoka Peace Accords, after King Ashoka, and invite dignitaries, women, leaders, artists, and politicians from around the world to come and give birth to a new federal democracy that we've never known in the world before. That's my hope for your people and your country. And so, and let's hope it happens soon. And it can happen if enough of us speak up and if the revolutionaries are supported more and more by the world. I wouldn't be surprised that in 2025, early 26, because the elections are going to fail with Ming Online. He's bogus. He's a world's leading terrorist. ASEAN doesn't want him anymore. No one wants him. It's a failed state. And his wife is going to turn him in, probably. His kids, they're going to start bailing out on them. And so it's better to restore the possibility, free the elected leaders and all 21,000. Get on Myanmar state television soon, sir, and immediately call for a ceasefire, release the political prisoners, and call in world leaders to help us negotiate a future without me. I'm just going to quietly retire if you let me. I'll go to Yunnan province, or I'll just live under house arrest in Naypyidaw. But the people are more important than me. And that's my hope in our campaign, with the book, with the world, with the Burmese. Unification right now, it's dark, as Martin Luther King said, but it's only dark that you get to see the light, the stars. And Burma is at that point right now where I do believe, not wishful thinking, this is the best chance that your people, we have, if enough of us gather together, especially world leaders as well, and go, Burma's not some fourth world country over there. It's a terrorist state right now with a lot of fentanyl coming out through the Shan state. But they've got something special that we don't know about. They've got a trans-Buddhist, multi-faith, radical ethnic inclusivity, federal democracy rooted in emotional, spiritual, mindful intelligence. And we want to know what these people who've been under prison looks like, how they lead, how we can learn. And I do believe it won't be long before the elected leaders that are now in prison will be in the White House having a conversation with Donald Trump and the team there. I think it'll happen within a year. So that's my take.
Thank you, Alan. I am looking forward to read your new book, Dialogue with Me Online. I really want to read it. And as you said, but I don't think he will give up on his on his own conscience, that person, Mei Aung. I think he needs to be beaten. He must be beaten. Otherwise, they won't give up. If
No.
even if you can get rid of Mei Aung, there will be second Mei Aung and third Mei Aung and fourth Mei Aung in order in this institution, this military institution in Burma. So we need to get rid of that whole institution for once and for all.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, this is why where the radical cutting off of weapons
Mhm.
and money will dry him up, and it'll completely create a psychological convulsion in the ecosystem of fellow terrorists in Myanmar, bankers, business leaders. And if Ming Online doesn't play his cards more wrongly than right, however it is, he's going to lose access to the Bay of Bengal, and China is going to remove him.
Mhm.
And they're going to remove the people near him, and they may very well see that the best people to talk with to protect China's interests with oil, rubies, gas, and slave labor, I hate to say it, with teak and rubies, will be a Democratic leadership. It's possible. He's really playing with fire. And now that he's lost Rakhine State, and it's going to be just a matter of time before he loses those deep sea ports, he's going to have to nuke the country in order to save himself. And it could very well be that Donald Trump, who hates fentanyl and opposes China, goes, you know, I might intervene. Don't count it out. But I hear what you're saying.
Mhm.
I would love to see the weapons cut, and he would just be like a 7-year-old boy crying in his palace in Naypyidaw. I don't have my guns anymore. And he couldn't even fire a gun, for God's sake. He's just a coward. He just parades around with medals that he never won except for wars he created. It's a fallacy of human life. It's an aberration. It's a satanic kind of terrorist cult going on there in the name of what? Dictatorship in its ugly form. The other thing about this book, which is called A Conversation with a Dictator, we're giving it away for free, by the way, to world leaders based upon a donation. So we're on a GoFundMe page. It's also the study of the architecture of tyranny, not just Burma, but worldwide. I spent nearly a year this last year studying this, and I put it into a 5-act play that you could, it's a literary feature film where you can sit for 2 hours and the whole 200-year history of Myanmar up until this very moment with an outcome is in your hands. And it's a dialogue, a fictional dialogue, obviously, with Ming Online in his presidential palace. It's somewhat crumbled in Naypyidaw. You know, in our last book, The Voice of Hope, Aung San Suu Kyi from Prison, and A Letter to a Dictator, which we did, Fergus Harlow and I did a couple of years ago, I wrote actually to Ming Online, inviting him into a conversation. That's The Letter to a Dictator. I wanted to have an unedited 2-hour conversation where I wanted to know, why do you kill your own people with impunity and call them terrorists when all they want is peace and freedom for you and your wife as well? Why do you incarcerate the entire people and say that they stole the election based upon some fallacy? What are you thinking? Are you a psychopath, a sociopath? Please help me to understand how you think when you look in the mirror, sir. And so he never responded. And so I said, okay, I'll make it up. But I gave him a lot of good lines, and I hope he reads it. He
Thank
might
you.
get some.
Yeah, he's the most, I think, stupid person in our history in terms of the military leaders. Did you notice that he presented that stupid story, that King Red story to the Putin?
Unbelievable.
How stupid Is he? I
He's
I can't find the correct word to describe him, to be honest with you.
it's the psychopathology of delusion.
Mm, yeah.
I also tried to do a deep search on that. It was no basis to be found. I mean, like we were rats in a previous life or something, or then we became kings. And I mean, I think with that much tyranny, murder, and day-to-day horror that he lives with, and no doubt he's got cyanide, he's got a pistol in his own room. I'm sure his wife and people don't even know which bedroom he's in at night. I'm
Mhm,
sure every mouthful of food and every drink he takes, he has a servant drink or eat it before he puts it in his mouth. I knew
mhm,
that Ne Win did that. He wouldn't
mhm,
get into a car. He had 7 simultaneous limousines and he wouldn't even tell which one he would get in. Ming Online is a paranoid schizophrenic at this point. No offense to schizophrenia, but he's really mentally unhinged. And I think the world knows that. We know that. But that's the performative role of leadership when you've got a uniform and you kill your people. Right on by Xi Jinping, right on by Putin. Cool, man. You kill really well. How do you do it? How do you sleep at night? I want to learn that. You don't, do you do sleeping pills? Do you on Prozac? What is it? Do you have SSRIs? No, man, I just love killing. I just love telling people to kill my own people. You can't believe how much fun that is. What do you think of a mind like that? Does he
He's
believe?
living in, yeah, he's living in his own creating delusional world, and all the military leaders believe themselves they are the protectors of the Buddhism, and they are very devoted Buddhists, and they are the one who can protect the Buddhism, and that's sort of delusion world they are living in, Alan.
I asked Dasu about this.
Mhm,
She felt that it was their fear of persecution that kept them doing what they do. And this is why, if you remember, she didn't even ask, very much like Desmond Tutu did in South Africa in the Reconciliation Council. She was not asking for a Truth and Reconciliation Council. She was let bygones be bygones.
mhm,
And I think the root of fear within Tan Shui and Ming Online and Tain Sein and all of their family and friends and other, I mean, your country, no offense to the Thamada, but they're a mafia. They're not a military. Every region has their own mafia chief. All extortion, drugs, lumber, jewels, sex trafficking, fentanyl, methamphetamines. It's a corrupt country on the level of the military. That's why it's a traumatized nation. And she took the position of they're terrified at their core. Why else would you torture, kill, and rape people unless you were completely terrorized of your own identity? They have no confidence in themselves. Yes, they tell themselves and each other that we mimic the overlords of the West in our style of democracy, which, one of the talking points I brought in this book, if you can bear with me, is like, I wanted to know, why do you do this? And he got Ming Online in one section of the book, gets in my face in his composed arrogance and says, who are you, journalist, to
mhm,
be talking about the moral rightness of a country? Do you not understand your own history?
mhm,
The way that you've persecuted people around the world in the name of democracy and freedom? You ended World War II with nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, 250,000 people, and you go, yeah, 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 we won the war. You annihilated. That's called, and you're wondering whether it's a genocide in Gaza?
mhm,
So he's throwing this all in my face.
mhm,
I'm going, I hear you. That doesn't mean that you're right.
mhm.
To mimic wrong. And this is why the people that you've incarcerated want to get it right. And it may be a good lesson for those around the world who also get it wrong. So we had this dialogue, and he ponders and he looks at the Buddha. And I ask him, sir, do you believe in karma?
Mhm.
Of course I do. I'm a Buddhist. What do you think it means? I think it means that we all live with chaitana, an intention, and based on that intention, whether it's motivated by kilesa or kusala, good and bad states of mind, you're going to have appropriate results. Well, sometimes you've got to act for the betterment of the people, journalist, and you've got to defy what you think of as your own karma to protect your family. Very clever response.
Mhm.
Killing is appropriate sometimes, especially when they're terrorists who do not understand peace through strength, just like your own president.
Mhm.
So this is the way they talk, right? But after 492 pages, 300 pages of illustration, 2-hour only read,
Mhm.
we get to the very end of the fifth act, and it's a cliffhanger. It's a cliffhanger. And I leave with him, I don't want to be a spoiler,
Mhm.
that no matter what you think, you as a Buddhist, sir, I don't wish you harm, but let's recall stories like Devadatta. You know, the Apayalokas are very real, especially for those who have abhinya. And you're a Buddhist and you believe in them, don't you, sir?
Mhm.
Well, karma has a way of making sure of results. And there's a lot of denial, I'm sure, going on in you that you're a very likely candidate to be a very long-standing peta, a hungry ghost, devoid of any power, any nutrients. And how does that make you feel when you think of that's what you're doing? And you're leading a lot of other people into that same level of tyranny. Leaders have to sometimes suffer the consequences when they know what they're doing for the family is right. Always has an answer. But at the end, history will judge you, sir. And your children, your grandchildren will want to know, who was this man? Was he evil or was he a modern day Ashoka?
Mhm.
And I walk out of the palace and we leave it at that. And we'll see what happens. It may be when this book is translated into Burmese, he may not want to read it directly, but he may want to hear about it. He may even watch this film.
Yes.
It's possible. Let us not give up hope.
Mhm.
That's Dosu.
Mhm.
Hope in action, enduring hope, even in incarceration.
Mhm.
So, from my heart to yours, thank you for taking the
Thank
time
you,
to.
Alan. Thank you. Thank you for giving me your time. I'm sorry I'm taking your time too long, and then I'll let you
Listen,
get.
it couldn't be a greater gift for me in my humble life
Mhm.
to be able to bring in any way possible again, it's not me, it's the voices of your people. I've been so obviously impacted.
Mhm.
It's born in America,
Mhm.
reborn in Myanmar
Mhm.
with my karma and dharma and revolutionary family.
Mhm.
My blood family in America, my karma, my dharma, my revolutionary family in Myanmar. I I just wish I would be able to have a free democratic country to go back and let the world come into this traumatized land and begin to understand with a new level of reconciliation and truth where all the ethnic groups can speak up and be represented. The people who've been imprisoned can be heard and share their stories of resilience and mindfulness and compassion and pain from behind bars, that they're not alone. The women and children that are just continuing to plant rice and flowers in fields and villages that have been bombed by Putin's rockets and drones. And it's unthinkable. I'm sure the same thing is going on in various other places in Sudan, Ukraine, Russia, Gaza. The resilience of the people in Myanmar is just what it should be brought out. If only we had a video camera of some of the inside workings of insane prison in Daw Sue's prison cell.
Alan, thank you very much. I think after I transcribed our conversation word to word, and I will start understanding of how that sort of very nonviolent Buddha's teachings and doctrines are intertwined with that revolutionary spirit to go against the evilness. So I think I can start understanding after I transcribe word to word.
That's a core issue. And again, just a 1 minute recap. In a country, said Alan, with a disproportionate amount of weapons, it's not default to have a nonviolent struggle. But even when we've been elected as leaders, the only way forward is to try to slowly introduce, not through arrogance or pride, an emotional, spiritual, mindful Dharma intelligence of cooperation. They told me that when we're in Parliament, what we do there is reconciliation in minute-to-minute action through our smile, through our listening, through our offering of food or tea together. That's your country. And so Dasu is a healer, and the people around her, if someone shouted at me, I'm the first probably to go shout back. Imagine the emotional depth to listen with poise and say, there's a way I hear you, we can talk about this. I would love to talk with you and learn more about your views. That's your country's leadership. That is a beautiful quality. That's nonviolence. It's not just the absence of weapons, but it's leading with the human heart, with listening, deep listening, caring for even the child who's traumatized. Ming Online and all the Thamada are inheritors of a very deep trauma under Ne Win, under World War II, under Tan Shui. They're indoctrinated in a way that makes the Manchurian Candidate, on par with what's happened with the military. I know a lot of military people. My very dear friend, Uncle U Tianu, the general of the army, he told me all about the indoctrination techniques. U Chi Mung, U Win Tain, a colonel. They got to be, I think if they were left to an option, my friend, they would come out of that delusion and go, wow, thank you for the gift of awakening to my humanity. And I've never seen a more tortured culture than yours. Under the British and World War II, I've been in a little bit of war out in Shan and Karen State and quite a bit of distance during the war in Yugoslavia during the last year of the war. But I don't think death and murder and bombing and guns you get it used to. I think it's just a deeper and deeper traumatic resilience and a type of deeper pain inside. And your culture has been tyrannized for a long, long time. And I think Dasu and the people said, listen, the only way forward is through the human heart, through conversation, through love, the feminine. So I hope that message goes around the world. And I hope the people who are imprisoned get a chance to voice it to the world.
Thank you. Thank you. You take care. Thank you again. And when I release the program, I will send you the links via email, Alan. Okay.
I'd be very honored to see that. And if there's any way that I could get a copy of this, please send it to me if you would.
Yeah, sure.
Our conversation.
Yeah, the whole conversation. Yeah. When I think it may take 15 minutes after that. I will send it later on when it is ready.
You take your time. You are, in my humble, you're doing a bodhisattva act. I mean, and I say this, if enough people knew the truth of Burma, what I'm saying is not that difficult to see if you go there.
Yeah.
Many of the people who've criticized Dasu never met her. Most of the journalists hardly have ever been to Burma.
Yeah.
So just remember that I say this with calm, but I had a very deep inside look at the leadership over decades and the Dharma teachers. And I've interviewed the Catholics. I interviewed all the Muslim leaders.
Mhm.
On and on. We didn't even get into that.
Mhm.
So it's not like one-sided.
Mhm.
So I can't wait. Thank you from my heart. If I can be of any support to you, anyone in your team, let me know. And thank you for doing this extraordinary work.
Thank you, Alan. So I will send the original conversation as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Later on today. Yeah, Alan. You take care of yourself, Alan.
Thank you. Thank
All the
you.
best.
Thank you.
All the best.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Take care. Bye for now.